For some analysis, let's bring in Richard Johnson. He's Senior Lecturer in US Politics at London's Queen Mary University. Thank you so much for being with us on the programme this morning. Firstly, we saw some of the press conference there in that report. Any missteps really from Biden at this point? They're taking on a huge importance, aren't they? What did you make of this latest performance during that highly anticipated press conference?
That's right. Ever since the debate, every action that Biden takes is under the microscope. And I have to say, in the last couple of weeks, he has done a reasonable job of trying to say and do the things to try his best to reassure people that he should be the nominee. He's gone out and done campaign events. He's done interviews. He's had elected officials speak out on his behalf. And he held this press conference. But I'm afraid that even in doing that, mistakes and cracks emerge. And actually, I thought Nancy Pelosi put it quite well when she said, is this an episode, speaking of the debate, or a condition? And if the condition is aging, then it's very difficult to reassure people otherwise, because aging is not something that stops or goes away. And every little slip up, the calling Zelensky, President Putin, calling Kamala Harris, Vice President Trump, on their own, they could be excused as this is a gaffe-prone politician who's made verbal slip-ups his entire political career. But seen in the light of a concern about an aging president, they take on a very weightier meaning.
And Richard, the press conference itself, it largely played to Biden's strengths, focused it a lot on foreign policy. But all the immediate attention, really, it is honing in on those slip-ups, isn't it?
It is, and Biden is trying to frame this again. You know, he's getting good advice. He's trying to frame this as, in almost populist terms, he's saying the media is against me, the elite are against me, but the American public are with me. But unfortunately, that isn't actually accurate anymore. The proportion of Democrats who believe that he should stand down has shot up since the debate. The proportion of Democrats who think that he is too old for the job has shot up. You know, we've gone from 4 years ago, you'd find about 40% of Americans would say he's too old for the job. Overwhelmingly, they were Republicans. That's about doubled, and that's because Democrats now think that he's too old for the job. We have the Republican convention coming up. That, I think, buys him a little bit of a reprieve. But also, I think it's important to say that the conversation for the last 2 weeks has not been really about Donald Trump or scrutinizing Donald Trump or holding Trump to account from the Democrats' perspective. It's been about Joe Biden. It's 2 wasted weeks of a campaign. And I just don't see this story really going away, because Joe Biden will not stop aging over the course of the campaign.
Is it inevitable then, Richard, that he will have to eventually bow out?
It's not inevitable, because it ultimately is mostly going to be his choice. But Biden is not the Democratic nominee, but he has 99% of the 4,000 delegates at the upcoming Democratic convention next month pledged to him. And so if Biden does nothing, then we can expect those delegates to vote for him. So if the path of least resistance is in effect Biden just to stay in place, and his delegates will nominate him at the convention. There are more extreme measures that could be taken, but those would involve, in effect, removing him from the presidency itself, invoking the 25th Amendment. And this is, I think, also one of the problems that Biden has. If Biden is saying that he's not up to the job from January, then questions are raised about, is he up to the job now? And that could be quite an awkward thing for him to navigate, even if he was willing to contemplate standing aside as the nominee.
Yeah, and amid all this ongoing speculation, some media outlets in the US are this morning reporting that the Biden campaign is also quietly assessing the viability of a Kamala Harris candidacy. Do you think if Biden does step aside, or is even forced to do so, that she's the obvious candidate to replace him? And who are the other contenders?
She is the obvious candidate to replace him, because she is the only other person in the country who has a kind of national mandate, in the sense that she was elected on the ticket in 2020. I think that an open convention or some kind of open process at this stage is too messy and too difficult. And ultimately, the selectorate at the convention is not like the old open conventions of, say, 70 years ago in the Democratic Party, where you had delegates from all different kinds of ideological persuasions in the party, and they would hear the speeches, and there would be debates and bartering and so on. These are all Biden delegates. So they're not representing a broad cross-section of the Democratic Party. And so I think that any other candidate other than Harris, who has that legitimacy as vice president, as the person who's already first in line to the presidency, I think any other candidate, whatever process they came up with, would lack legitimacy. And I think that the losers would potentially question that individual who was selected. And the risk of that is that it puts Democrats off in November and turnout is depressed. And this is an election where the Democrats cannot afford to have depressed turnout, because it really is on a knife edge, especially in those swing states. So I think that the most straightforward thing is for Biden to instruct his delegates to vote for Kamala Harris at the convention. And then there could be a contest for vice president, or Harris might decide to choose someone who helps to balance the ticket, maybe someone like Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, or Governor Whitmer of Michigan, and a Midwesterner. I think that might be a wise choice. People have talked about Gavin Newsom, but I think having two Californians on the ticket might not be the best in terms of thinking about the electoral map. So if I were Kamala Harris and I was the nominee, I'd be looking at probably at a Midwestern candidate, or a candidate from a swing state like Georgia or Arizona, to help balance off the ticket for the Electoral College.
Finally, Richard, you referred to it earlier. Democrats will be hoping the attention will turn towards Republicans from next week. They're due to hold their national convention, gets underway on Monday. Trump, all the while, is largely going under the radar, isn't he?
Exactly. Trump has been very canny, in a sense. I think he recognizes from the debate night itself. There were rumors that after the debate, Trump was going to go into the spin room himself and talk to the press in the post-debate wash-up, and he decided not to. And I think he knew that basically he didn't need to say anything, because Joe Biden had said all that needed to be said from Trump's perspective. And indeed, that has mostly been the case for the last couple of weeks. It'll be interesting now in the upcoming week, with the spotlight put on the Republicans. Will there be a bit more scrutiny? But I think we'll expect a repeated reinforcement of this message that Joe Biden isn't up to it, that Joe Biden is past it. And this is safe ground for the Republicans to be on, because now a lot of Democrats, in their hearts of heart and indeed openly, agree with that. If I were the Democrats, I'd let the Republicans have their convention, and then quite soon after the Republican convention, I'd have Biden come out and give a statement and say that he's going to not accept the nomination, and therefore he will endorse his Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee.
We'll see how it plays out. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to leave it there for now. That is Richard Johnson, Senior Lecturer in US Politics at London's Queen Mary University.